Yo, what's up? Today we're going to do a track breakdown of my song Real Badmon, which is out on SubCarbon Records. First, I'm just going to play the song through, and then I'll show you each individual group, and then we'll go ahead and dive into each group in depth. So let's play it from the beginning. Okay, cool. So we'll save the second drop for later when we dive into everything. It's pretty similar to the first drop. But first, let's start with the first drop and go over the drums. So this is what the drums sound like in the first drop. And then our bass group sounds like this. Then we have some effects. And then we have some vocals.
Badman. Bad gal. Badman. Badman.
And then all together.
Badman.
Okay, so with the drums, the trick is to use good samples. I honestly reuse the same kicks in a lot of my songs. There's like 5 different kicks I use total, because I know they sound good and I know they will be nice and loud and clean in the mix. As you can see, I have nothing going on the channel. It's just this clean kick sample. And then we have a quarter note hat going on. And I panned it to the left and turned it down a bit. And there's actually no EQ on this. I would probably usually put an EQ on it just to clean it up. But in this case, it looks like I did not do that. So a good example of if it sounds good, just leave it. Don't overthink stuff. And then for our snare, we have a clap layer. And then we have a snare enhancer from my sample pack. And one interesting thing I'm doing here is every snare has a different enhancer sample, or just like a different layer sampled on it, so that every snare is slightly different than the last one. So we have this one, then this one, then this one, and then this one. It's actually back and forth between 2 of them. So then we have this ride sample. And that's playing on the offbeats. That's a classic technique. We have a little bit of reverb on it to put it in its own space. And then we have this shuffly, faster paced hi-hat. This is really fun to do with this style of dubstep. Having fast perks with clean, dirty, low-end basses sounds really cool. So far we have all this going on. And then we have some crashes on the one. And then here's another trick I like to do. I like to take breaks from my sample library. So I'll just type in like drum break or something. And I'll try to warp it to the grid and mess with the warp modes down here. So as you can see, I used beats mode and put it on transients. And we also pitched it up 29 semitones. So definitely get experimental with this. So if we bring it down, which that would probably still sound cool, but when we pitch it up, it has more of a like percussion-y sound. So then the final thing I like to do with pretty much all my songs is I will put a group processing rack on my drums. This one is the Jade Cicada one. It's just applying some glue compressor and a little bit of Ableton's drum bus. So without that, the drums sound like this. And then with it, so just kind of beefs everything up and ties all of the samples together. So let's move to our basses. So the basses are mainly Vital basses, which is cool because I usually use Serum. And the secret sauce here is if you go to advanced and mess with these settings, you can get some really cool sine wave basses. I'll actually include the preset for this for you guys. A harmonic stretch with harmonic series and some voices. And then if you mess with these settings back here, you get these really cool gritty basses. So yeah, so you can hear, you get lots of variations by messing with that stuff. So we have that one. And what I like to do is once I have one good bass going, I'll just duplicate it and we'll get a call and response thing going. So right here we have our call and then this is our response. Okay, so one cool thing I'm doing on this main bass down here is we have this volume automated reverb layer going. So if we just solo that, you could hear this kind of pumping effect we get from the reverb. And the way I'm doing that is just with a parallel chain with lots of reverb, erosion, OTT, and EQ, and then we have this auto pan with the phase all the way down acting as a volume automation. So this is kind of like a volume shaper or a tremolo effect. So if we turn this off, you can hear it's much longer, it's not stuttering. This is making the volume bounce up and down. And when we layer that reverb layer with just our bass, so here's the bass by itself, we combine those two, it adds this nice space and almost does like a reverb throw and adds a nice bounce and atmosphere to our bass line. And then over here, this is just a variation of the original bass. Changed it to a quarter note. And we're also using Rift here. Without Rift, it's not that good. Rift does some beautiful work. I'm just using a preset here. Shout out Rift, that's one of my favorite plugins. I have that on a lot of the basses here. So let's hear this one without Rift. Yes, Rift is doing some work on these. That's awesome. So yeah, then we're just going back and forth, and call and response is really important here. We have call, response, call, response, call, response. And all of the basses are talking to each other, and it doesn't get too repetitive or boring. Let's go over here to one of the fills. These basses are really cool. Yeah, so the trick here is going to be smooth. I think smooth is a really underrated control in Serum and Vital. So if we turn smooth up, it kind of makes our sound more legato. So if we turn smooth down, we have this very aggressive wub. And as we turn smooth up, it kind of does exactly what it says. It smoothens the sound out and kind of makes the volume more legato. And I love this for just like low-end wobbly basses like that. We listen to this one over here, it's the same thing. Smooth way up. And again, no rift. Still pretty cool, but then with the rift, really beefs that up. Okay, then I want to go over to these basses over here. These ones are cool, so we have this layer and this layer. So this one is just, again, smooth is the secret sauce here. We're making it nice and it's like a smooth wobble. It's the same bass, just a variation of the original bass we've been using. But then we're using a different rift preset. Oh, actually, we're not. I think we're using a different distortion in here. Yes, we're using soft clip with the drive way up. It's really distorting that sound. And then the layer is basically the same thing, just with rift turned off. So without rift. And then when you combine the two, they sound really cool. And then one other really cool thing we got going on is we have this vocal layer on top of all of our basses. And this is going on over here as well. So what it sounds like this. So if we turn all these effects off, it sounds like this. So it sounds much different. We're using Little Altar Boy to change the pitch and add some distortion. So without Little Altar Boy, with Little Altar Boy. And then we have the auto pan over here, giving it a volume automation to make it bounce with the rhythm of our bass line. So if you hear it in context with our bass, it adds this extra layer, extra bouncy atmosphere. It's similar to the reverb effect that we're doing over here in parallel. And then the cool thing that we do over here is I change the rhythm to match the rhythm of this wobble. Or actually, it's going at a different rhythm, so then there's kind of this contrast going on. So this is 1/8. I think this is 16ths. Yeah, 16th notes. So the 16th note combined with the 8th note layer sounds really cool. Okay, let's move on to the effects. Down here we have just some glass, a basic riser, using operator. And then we have an upsweep, some chants, and then another riser. Pretty basic stuff. And then the vocals are really cool. So this is from a YouTube video my friend sent to me. And I decided to sample that.
Badmon.
Again, we're using
Badmon.
We're using Little Altar Boy to get a cool pitch and kind of give it some distortion. And then just some basic reverb and delay stuff going on here to give it a space.
Badmon.
And then I'm using these vocals as kind of little fillers throughout, little ear candy every couple of bars. And this is another thing that's going to help your songs not get repetitive and boring. They just have some dub echo on them. And then right here, we just chop up that pre-drop vocal.
Badmon.
Alright, let's move on to the intro. So the intro, we start with just some of the original perks from the drop drums. So this is one of my favorite things to do, is just take some perks or some of the more minimal drums that you have going on in your drop and use them for the intro to fill out space and get a vibe started. So we just have these hi-hats going. Very simple. And then we also have this kind of weird atmosphere sample from an FN pack. It looks like we just pitched it down 3 semitones to fit the key of the track. And then we also have the main bass with a bunch of reverb, and it's all filtered out in the beginning. And as we get closer to the drop, it's less filtered and less washed out. So it's coming closer and closer. And then for the synths, we have those same vocals from the drop. So these vocals. And we're using them kind of as our melodic element for our intro, along with some Reese notes and a melody. And I think this song is a great example of drop and intro relationship. I think a lot of beginner producers miss this. A lot of these elements in our intro are already existing in our drops. So like I just showed you, we have this vocal that's going on in our intro, which is also going on in our drop. And then you maybe didn't notice, but this melody, that melody is the same melody that our bass line is playing. So that's one thing I often like to do when I need a melody for my intro. I'll just take the melody I used for my bass line and use that with some type of melodic sound or some type of pluck. And it doesn't always have to be the exact same, but it's sometimes a good starting point as well. So you can make variations of this melody and maybe make it more interesting, like this. Like put some different steps and different things in there to make it more interesting. And then another thing we have going is this FN sample that we have going in the intro is also playing in our drop. So pretty much all the elements in our intro are already elements that are existing in our drop. So now we have a nice relationship between the intro and the drop. So yeah, I think that's a really important thing to go over that a lot of people don't cover. Then what do we got here? We have another riser during the intro, or down sweeps. And some risers. Really basic stuff there. I don't think I need to show you guys how effects sections work. There's plenty of videos on that. Okay. Yeah, I think that's good. I think that's a pretty good track breakdown. Like I said before, I'll give you guys the vital patches available for download. As usual, I hope you guys learned something. Thank you for all the support. You guys are the best. Don't forget to listen to the new EP on SubCarbon. Peace.